Alan Renner wasn't bullied. He was forgotten. He walked the halls like a background character. Hoodie up, eyes glued to the floor, earbuds in with no music playing. He didn't speak unless spoken to. Teachers barely remembered his name. Most students weren't even sure if he still went there. So when a strange black and silver flyer appeared in his locker one morning, no school logo, no contact info, just a bold title, Vanguard Youth Initiative, for the exceptional, he figured it was a joke. But on the back, neatly typed, was his name at home. His mom turned the flyer over in her hands. "You sure this isn't one of those scams?" she asked, clearly skeptical. Alan shrugged. "It says it's through the school board, and it's for kids like me." His mother sighed, staring at him for a long moment. "You're smart, Alan. Maybe too smart. Just be careful, okay?" He nodded silently, not knowing how much. He'd need to remember those words. The next morning, a matte black van with no markings pulled up in front of their house. Inside, two other teens sat in silence, staring straight ahead. A woman in a white lab coat greeted him with a blank smile and a cold tone. "Welcome to Vanguard, Alan. You're going to do great." The doors locked behind him. The facility wasn't a school. It wasn't even trying to pretend to be one. He was led through white, sterile corridors and into rooms with harsh lights, observation glass, and cold metal chairs. They ran tests, strange puzzles, emotional simulations, breath control challenges, injections of unmarked substances. By day 4, he could see perfectly in pitch black. By day 5, cold didn't affect him. On day 6, he remembered every word, spoken in the facility, like his brain had become a recorder. By day 7, he gripped a biometric scanner too hard and shattered it. That night, behind the glass, two scientists whispered in panic. "He's adapting," one said, "faster than any of the others." The other leaned in. "No stress. No burnout. No fear. We may have underestimated him." Alan sat in silence in his room, staring at his reflection. A shallow cut on his arm sealed itself before his eyes. His breathing was slow, perfect. His gaze didn't flinch. Something inside him had changed. Then, without explanation, they released him. No ceremony. No goodbye. Just a quiet shuttle ride back to school and a sealed envelope marked confidential. As the van disappeared down the street, Alan stood still, staring at the school building ahead. He wasn't confused. He wasn't afraid. He was calculating. They had tried to control him, shape him into something useful, but Alan wasn't a weapon. He was becoming something far more dangerous, and school was his new testing ground. Alan returned to school the next day like nothing had happened. No one noticed he'd been gone for a week. Not the teachers, not the students. He slipped through the crowd like fog through trees, silent, unbothered, invisible. But inside, everything had changed. The first thing he noticed was the noise. He could hear the math teacher on the second floor arguing with someone behind a closed door, 2 rooms away. Conversations bled through walls like whispers in his head. His brain filtered them without effort, picking up phrases, names, secrets. When a football jock slammed his locker shut 2 rows down, Alan flinched, not from fear, but because he could hear the boy's heart rate spike. He wasn't just hearing louder, he was sensing things. Frequencies, emotions, intent. Then came the memory flashes. Not visions, just knowledge. He could recall the entire class schedule of everyone in his homeroom. Their routines. Where they sat at lunch. The way Mr. Reddington, the chemistry teacher, always tapped the board 3 times before writing. Patterns jumped out at him like they were outlined in neon. He saw the world differently now, not as a student, but as a system to be dissected. Still, Alan said nothing. He tested his limits quietly. One day, during gym, he ran the mile in half the time it usually took and still wasn't winded. His balance was better, reflexes sharper. When a basketball flew toward his head unexpectedly, he caught it mid-sentence without even looking. People started staring, whispering. He pretended it was a fluke, smiled awkwardly, shrugged it off. Night. In his room, he pushed things further. He sat cross-legged on the floor, focusing on his breathing, slowing his pulse. He tried to push his senses outward, and sometimes it worked. He could hear his neighbor's television, smell the soup cooking across the hall. Once, he stayed up all night just reading, not books, but information. His brain devoured every detail, storing it perfectly. But what shook him most happened by accident. It was in the cafeteria, when someone shoved past him, hard. Alan's tray clattered to the floor. The guy turned to laugh, but stopped. Alan's eyes had changed. Not just their expression, but the color. For a brief second, they shimmered. Amber. Predator-like. And just as quickly, it faded. That night, Alan stood in front of the bathroom mirror, watching his reflection with clinical detachment. He cut his palm, slowly, deliberately. The skin closed itself in less than 5 seconds. No pain. No scar. His biology wasn't just reacting, it was adapting. The Vanguard initiative hadn't cured anything. They had unlocked something that was still evolving. Alan didn't understand it fully. Not yet. But he had time. And in the meantime, he was going to start watching people back, carefully, quietly, because soon, this school, this world, would realize something. Alan Renner wasn't just another kid anymore. He was becoming something else, something built to survive anything. The pep rally was a circus. Banners screamed school pride in cheap colors. Music blared from dented speakers. Teachers danced awkwardly. Students filed into the bleachers, laughing, texting, pushing each other like they had 1,000 times before. The gym reeked of sweat, popcorn, and teenage boredom. Alan Renner sat at the very top of the bleachers. Alone. Put up. Eyes scanning that he wasn't just watching, that he was calculating. Every vent, every wire, every shadow. He could feel the vibrations. In the walls now. Hear the frequency hum behind the light fixtures. Ever since the transformation, the awakening, Alan had realized his senses were beyond human. He could hear the pulse of people's heartbeats. Feel the static from their nerves, that he was a radar, a machine, wrapped in flesh. And today was the day they would see that. Tyler Hensley strutted to the center court, microphone in hand. He wore his varsity jacket like a crown and grinned like a politician. Behind him, the cheer team rallied up the crowd. Alan saw it all unfold in slow motion. The smirks, the fake applause, the principal giving Tyler the nod to speak, as if this was his kingdom. All right, calm down, Tyler called out, flipping his perfectly gelled hair. Before we wrap this thing up, how about we give a round of applause to the weirdest mystery in our school, Alan Renner. Still alive, still creepy, and somehow still here. The laughter was immediate. Loud. Cruel. Alan didn't move, he didn't need to, because as soon as the laughter hit its peak, he blinked, and the entire power grid of the school died. The lights exploded. Literally, glass raining from above. The scoreboard sparked and fizzled. Every phone and speaker emitted a piercing shriek, then went black. The emergency lights failed. Total darkness. Screams. A stampede started. Students scrambled over bleachers. The teachers shouted for calm. Then a new sound echoed through the gym. Something low, electric, inhuman. And Alan was there. Not in the bleachers, in the center court. Standing right where Tyler had been seconds ago. Nobody saw him move. It was like he teleported. His hoodie was gone. The faint glow from his skin, like heated metal, cast shifting shadows across the stunned crowd. His veins pulsed faint white-blue beneath his skin. His eyes shimmered like dying stars. Someone whispered, "What the hell?" Alan raised one hand, just slightly, and the metal bleachers on both sides of the gym groaned, the screws wrenching themselves free with violent snaps. The whole gym creaked as if gravity had bent sideways. Tyler tried to rush him. Alan didn't flinch. The moment Tyler got close, he flew backward like a rag doll, flung against the gym wall and pinned there, held by nothing but invisible pressure. Alan's voice carried, distorted like it was riding on a wave of electricity. "You called me a freak," he said softly. "A ghost. A loser. You turned my silence into a target. You never wondered why I was quiet." He turned in a slow circle, eyes scanning the crowd. "You should have." With a flick of his fingers, the floor cracked. Symbols scorched themselves into the hardwood. Alien, spiraling patterns that shimmered with white-hot heat. The air shimmered. Phones burst. Watches melted. Tyler whimpered. Alan didn't look at him. "I didn't ask for this," Alan continued. "But now that I have it, I'm not hiding anymore." Suddenly, the gym doors slammed shut. Chains of metal wrapped themselves around the handles, self-forged, self-twisting. A cyclone of metallic shards floated midair around Alan like a storm waiting to be unleashed. "You think this is chaos?" Alan whispered, barely audible over the crackle of energy. "This is control. This is what happens when a weapon learns who made it. The teachers screamed for help. Phones didn't work. Cameras fried. The school's Wi-Fi destroyed. Alan walked toward Tyler, who was still pinned. Pale and silent, he leaned in close. Voice low. I was nothing, he said. You made me need this. He raised his hand again, a final burst of light blinding the entire gym, and then he vanished in an explosion. No aftershock, just silence, smoke, and a dozen kids crying out on the floor, burned into the wood, was a single symbol, not one anyone could read, but one that everyone would remember. Rain struck the city in waves, painting the streets silver beneath flickering lights. The news buzzed everywhere. Unknown power surge devastates local high school. Officials baffled by gym collapse, and teen suspects still missing. But none of that mattered to the man watching from the top floor of a silent skyscraper downtown. Inside a dimly lit room, rows of monitors displayed camera footage, electromagnetic readings, and stills of Alan midair, electric energy bursting. From his skin, symbols burned into the gym floor. The man leaned back in his chair, suit impeccable, silver streaks in his hair. His fingers steepled beneath his chin. He's awake, he muttered. The door slid open behind him. A woman in tactical black stepped inside, eyes sharp. Sir, the anomaly patterns match Eden Protocol levels. Same as Geneva '08. And Cape Town before that. He didn't respond immediately, just tapped on the screen, zooming into Alan's eyes. Fearless, he said. Or furious. The woman narrowed her gaze. Shall we move in? He shook his head. Not yet. He's too raw. Doesn't know what he's capable of, or what he is. She hesitated. If the arcane division gets to him first, they won't, he snapped. This one's different. This one chose not to destroy. The room fell silent. Then he swiped a control panel. One of the screens displayed a logo, a silver triangle encased in a circle of stars, with an ancient key piercing through its center. Under it, Edenfall Academy, Send the Crow.